Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Neil Wagner with the Queen's Chamber and the Queen's Tech Council, and this is one of our first events here with Google. A little bit about the Queen's Tech Council. It is a new initiative with the Queen's Chamber and a variety of stakeholders across the borough to build a pro-tech ecosystem here in Queens County. Today, we're super excited to be joined by Brendan Collins from Google, where he'll be talking about some excellent apprenticeship opportunities with the company right here in New York City. Brendan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. As that warm welcome indicated, my name is Brendan Collins. I'm on Google's campus outreach team based here in wonderful New York. It is a beautiful day. It's summer in New York is quickly arriving in the sense that it's getting muggy and nice and toasty outside. But it's way better than the horrible, horrible winter we all suffer through. So just my thanks again to the Queen's Tech Council for having me. So what we're going to go over today is I wanted to give everyone here a sense of kind of the broadening, suite of options available at Google for folks who are interested in a career in the tech industry. And what's nice about Google no longer being a startup is that we have so many different opportunities across technology, across sales, business, finance, you name it. And one of the reasons why we have apprenticeships in such a forward and strong way in New York City is because we fully recognize that New York is arguably the best pool of talent in the United States for tech industry hires. So thank you all again for having me. So let me just advance the slides here. Just a quick overview of kind of what we're going to do today. I'll talk about apprenticeships, kind of where we are, what are the different opportunities, why is the program in existence, sort of the distinction between what is an apprenticeship versus what is an internship versus what is a full-time job. Hopefully explain all of the ins and outs of each role, and then it wouldn't be an info session at Google without some resume advice. And this, I think I speak for everybody on the call, putting together a resume and sending it out is arguably the most frustrating and soul-crushing activity any of us do, because no one is born good sort of, talking up themselves, getting ready to brag on paper about what you've done in your life. But I'm happy to report that the advice we'll go over here just pretty briefly is it's good sort of company agnostic advice for any major tech company. We all kind of use the same playbook on this front. So yes, this is a session by Google, ostensibly for apprenticeships at Google, but the resume advice that we'll talk about today is pretty much fair game and good to use for any major tech company. And then we'll finish, and I want to leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A. And I saw Neil in the chat window just said, please put any questions right here in the chat. So let me see how many people are actually on the call right now. See if I can get a number. And I can't zoom out here, but we'll say if there's enough people, and we can sort of play it by ear, the QTC folks. But if we want, towards the end of the session, if people wanted to unmute and ask your question live, be my guest. But otherwise, if you put a question here in the chat window, we will answer them sort of in reverse chronological order, so that your question will get answered for sure. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to answer any questions until we get all the way through the session. So feel free to plop them in there, and then we will address them in order towards the end. That sounds okay. So what's also nice is that I'm not alone. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Sarah Henderson, who is on our engineering education team. And if she wants to unmute and introduce herself super quick, I will let her do that right now.
Yeah. Otherwise... Hi, Brendan. Thanks for kicking us off. Neil, thanks so much for the introduction. And thank you all for making time to learn a little bit more about our growing apprenticeship program this year. So I sit on the engineering education team. The growing and kind of inception of apprenticeships in the US has been a joint effort in between a whole host of different teams at Google, including the campus outreach, HR and recruiting function, as well as our education teams, so that we're meaningfully thinking through how any particular candidate or apprentice that joins us has a full-on kind of like learning experience, both on-site within the teams, but then also outside and through the classroom. So I'm really excited to be here and talk a little bit, help out in the Q&A. I also am a program manager at Google, and I'm also, in addition to working with local partners to spread the news about our apprenticeship program, I'm helping our apprenticeship team scope out what the project management apprenticeship looks like for apprentices once they are on site. So any specific project management apprenticeship and questions, I'd be happy to kind of go through that and talk a little bit about what we're thinking through for that role specifically. So thanks for having me, Brendan.
Thanks, Sarah. So you can read faster than I can speak, but I'm on the campus outreach team. And I like that Sarah's fact is, I believe it says, I've driven a Jeep off a cliff, and we'll leave it up to you. We'll leave it up to you, the audience, to decide if that was she intentionally
survived.
Yeah, or was it intentional? Was it an accident? Isn't it more fun to just kind of not know?
I'll leave everyone guessing.
Leave you all guessing. And then if you haven't, one of my favorite New York things is every couple of years, if you take the one train all the way up to its terminus in Marble Hill, you can walk the entire length of Manhattan across the Henry Hudson Bridge all the way down the west side to the Battery. It's about 16 miles. It's beautiful. You can stop in Harlem, get some dinosaur barbecue on 125th Street. You stop in the West Village and get a little snack or a drink, and then you finish at sunset down at the Battery. It's beautiful. So we all love New York, so it's a pleasure and thrilled to be here. So real quick, look, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about our growing apprenticeships programs. And this year we have 6 separate apprenticeship tracks in the U.S. Located in different cities across the U.S. But the good news is that all 6 of these apprenticeships are have a significant presence in New York City. New York is the only Google office in the U.S. that has all 6 apprenticeship tracks represented. So what are these apprenticeships, right? And we refer to them as tracks and pathways more than jobs and roles, because one of the opportunities that we had with apprenticeships in general was to recognize the distinction between something like an internship, which is kind of like a tryout for a full-time job, and an apprenticeship, which is something that the United States doesn't really have that much experience doing outside of some specific trades like HVAC work or plumbing or very hands-on electrical engineering type work. But with the tech industry, Google has really no experience doing this kind of work. And the point of an apprenticeship, as opposed to an internship or a full-time job, is to immerse you in the material so that you are learning on the job while getting paid, while getting industry experience, so that at the conclusion of the apprenticeship, you are, if we've done our job well, you are prepared for a full-time entry-level role in the tech industry with those skills that you've learned. You have, a Department of Labor certified credential that says I have done the work that is, relevant to what an entry-level role requires for any given field. And you are, fully packaged and sort of ready to go. And one of the key goals here with apprenticeships, again, as opposed to internships, is that for so long, too long, some might say, the only way to get a foot in the door with the tech industry is to have gotten a 4-year degree and to have a network that you can plug into, hopefully, if you have access to it. And then you kind of have to get lucky a few times in order to sort of find yourself in that bottom of the ladder, work your way up the totem pole type career track. Apprenticeships flips that whole model on its head and says, and we'll talk about the eligibility and qualifications you need. But in general, we want folks who have less than 12 months experience in the given field. We want people who don't have a 4-year degree in the given field. We're looking for folks who have a high school equivalency or GED, or if you're long out of high school and you have significant work experience, that also qualifies too. But in general, we're looking for people who are really new to the field. We don't want people who have too much experience and might even be overqualified for an apprenticeship. Ideal apprentices don't have that much experience in the field. So this is really new for us, and we're super, super excited. Last year, we had 1 apprenticeship track in IT in New York and Austin, Texas, and it was such a huge success that we decided to expand it dramatically to these fields that you see here. So we have locations across the United States, and the tracks themselves are in data analytics, digital marketing, IT, project management, software engineering, and user experience design specifically. The IT apprenticeship is 12 months. It's paid full-time, 40 hours a week. The remaining 5 apprenticeships are 20 months long. So and they'll all pretty much start at this fall. IT will start in August. The rest will start in October. So you're looking at until sort of mid 2023 is when you would come out of one of these apprenticeships sort of ready to go. This is an expansion this year. And New York, as you can see on this map here, is the only site in the United States that has all 6 apprenticeship tracks. And one of the best things about this is that the design for where these apprenticeships go is not an accident. It's not an accident that New York has all 6 opportunities here. It's because the talent is here, the pool is here. And New York, in New York City, our office in New York City specifically, is growing and has grown even throughout COVID. I don't know if any of you have driven on the West Side Highway and seen that huge building at the intersection of Houston and the West Side Highway. That's a Google office. It's going to open in 2023. It's going to have, thousands of seats inside. Google is not shrinking. We are not going like some other companies. And this is not a knock on them. This is just a difference of style. But Google understands the value of having in-person conversations at work. And so we are committed to having opportunities for New Yorkers in New York. So that's one of the main reasons why we have all 6 opportunities here. And I mentioned also, one of the reasons why we have such a breadth of opportunities here is so that we can train people with the relevant skills that are applicable potentially to many different career tracks, right? So as part of the apprenticeships, all 6 tracks have Department of Labor registered certifications and certificates, similar to, like for IT, similar to CompTIA, right? Google itself has spun up a number of Department of Labor certified credentials that you will learn as part of your on-the-job training, so that when you leave the apprenticeship, you will have not only the on-the-job experience at Google, you will have an independent certification that says that you are in fact qualified to do entry-level work in this field. See if anything else here. No, I think that's it. So let's keep rolling. So who is eligible? I alluded to this in a little bit, but truly we are looking for folks who are super hungry and passionate and obviously want to explore this as a career option, but also people who aren't that experienced yet. So an example, let's say I want to be a data analytics apprentice, right? I am someone who maybe is a career changer. Maybe I've taken a data science class at a boot camp, or I've self-taught, or I've gone to a couple industry events, and I'm just kind of dipping my toes in that water. If you have a 4-year degree in any of the fields, and I'll go back to the slide just to let you what the actual tracks are. So if you have a degree in software engineering from a 4-year school, you're probably overqualified. But that doesn't mean you can't work at Google. That just means that our full-time jobs are probably better suited for you. Same for UX, same for data analytics, same for marketing. If you have formal training, the apprenticeships are generally not up your alley. Instead, and we can send out this information to everyone here, but you can check out our options about our full-time opportunities. So who is eligible for apprenticeships? It's truly anyone, really. Anyone who is not already invested heavily in the field, and you do need a high school equivalency or GED, or the relevant amount of work experience if you've been out of the high school age for quite some time. That's if you've been a working adult for years and you don't happen to have a GED or high school equivalency, that's a-okay. And then fewer than 12 months of experience in the field of interest or in the same field as the apprenticeship. That's kind of the deal-breaking ingredient there for whether or not someone is overqualified versus perfectly qualified. And we'll talk more about sort of the how to showcase your eligibility on resumes when we get to the resume section. So I want to now talk about the apprenticeships that we do have available that are hiring right now. So as I mentioned, all 6 are available in New York City. 3 of the 6 have already opened and closed because they were the ones with the shortest application windows. So the ones that have closed are, and I'll mention a little bit more about them towards the end, but they're in IT, which is the original one that we have, and it's a huge success. We also have software engineering and UX design. IT, software engineering, and UX design have all opened and closed, but these 3 that I'm going to talk about now are open right now, and you can go ahead and apply today. And we'll talk more about the specifics there in just a second. So digital marketing, you'll apprentice. It's 20 months long. It starts in October. You'll get bespoke training from a third-party educator, which is going to be true for pretty much all of the apprenticeship tracks, not just in New York, but across the US. So after completing the initial trainings, you will be, you'll have sort of 2 kind of rotations on different teams. You'll be at Google sort of 80% of the time, where you are sitting in the office with your coworkers and peers. And then the other part is the 20% that's going to be sort of off-the-job training that's included in the third-party educator. And that's where the certification program also comes in place. So if you're apprenticing with a sales team as a digital marketing apprentice, you'll help, design and implement, campaigns across a bunch of different ad networks and platforms that Google has, working directly with clients to give them the best bang for their buck in terms of what Google has to offer to help their businesses. And another one that's going to be hosted in New York, similar sort of general framework, is that the Data Analytics Apprenticeship, also 20 months long, also starts in October. This is where Google's homespun data analytics professional certification will come in handy. And you will get it as part of being an apprentice in this program. So after you get the data analytics certificate, which is designed by Google, you will join Google for a period of onboarding and sort of cohort-based project work where you will be embedded with teams, very similar to the digital marketing apprentices. And the data analytics apprentices will work on 2 different teams, similarly kind of rotating for exposure to the many ways that data analytics skills are leveraged across the business. And one of the reasons why this job is called data analytics and not data scientist or big data apprenticeship, it's because one of the goals for the apprenticeships is not to get people prepared for a specific job title. It's to get people prepared with skills that can be applicable to a whole range and spectrum of job titles. And one of the jobs that we have as the hosts for these apprentices is to get people familiar with what are the actual skills that you will learn that you can then market yourself. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the resume section. But the data analytics apprenticeship also based in our beloved New York City. And last but not least is the third and final opportunity that actually just went live later last week is the project management apprenticeship. So my colleague Sarah mentioned that she's actually on the ground working to help build this program from scratch. So if you have specific questions about this apprenticeship, she can be a fount of knowledge. But in general, the framework is similar to the other apprenticeships that we've mentioned. They will work sort of, again, embedded in many cross-functional teams across not just tech, but also on the business side, on the finance side, on the sort of everything else, the HR side, that's me and my team. But you will help teams scope, organize their work, and just get things done, right? What I love about this opportunity is that it's the hardest to pin down in terms of what previous experience would make you qualify for this. This is where if you have experience managing any sort of complicated system, and that can be in your summer job in high school where you are the manager for a retail shop, right? You are organizing a huge trip for your church or synagogue or whatever, right? The more amount of experience that you can show having done this kind of, what they say, thriving in ambiguity, that's the kind of skills that will work well for this apprenticeship. And similar to the other tracks that I mentioned, they'll participate in the Google Project Management Professional Certificate, which again is Department of Labor certified. It'll be a mix of, that'll happen prior to actually the start of on-site work at Google. So you'll start working at the office with the certificate at hand, which will give you some of the building blocks and basics of how to be a product manager. And then similar to the other tracks, you will sort of work within a couple of teams embedded within them, overseeing short-term and long-term projects in a way that to benefits the team. And the goal there is to show how you personally, as an apprentice, made a difference in the team where you were functioning. As I mentioned, also, we have 3 other apprenticeships that are also based in New York City. They have opened and closed their applications. Similar to the tracks we've already mentioned, they will all come with independent Department of Labor certifications, either from Google ourselves or from another provider. There is going to be also an element of on-the-job formal training from a third party on top of the embedded element within teams so that you can roll up your sleeves and actually do the work alongside the rest of your peers. It's all to say these are all full-time paid positions with commensurate benefits and salary. The price range, we can't talk about compensation right now, but the cost of living of New York City and the market rate for tech industry professionals has definitely been taken into consideration. So this is not some kind of side job or part-time job. This is designed to be full-time, put bread on the table. This is your job for 20 months or 12 months if you're in the IT program. Cool, so how to apply? You can go to google.com/students or google.com/careers, and you can find those jobs there. You can also go to g.co/apprentices. And actually, I can type that in the chat window right now. g.co/apprenticeships. if you check out that link, you can see they have a lot of the information that we've covered in this presentation. It has an FAQ section about eligibility, like if you have questions about sort of visa restrictions or anything else like that. One of the other elements of eligibility here is that we do require independent work authorization from all applicants. So if you do not have a US visa or a green card, we can't provide you one. But if you are able to secure one on your own before the start of the apprenticeship, then you're definitely eligible. I realize that's easier said than done, but in case people were curious about what might be the boundary between where Google could help provide work authorization and what you'd need to do on your own. For these apprenticeships, since they are fixed term positions, they're not full-time jobs. For this time, we're requiring applicants to provide those on their own. And when you do apply, you'll see that there is a fairly simple process for actually filling out the application, but there's a section of the application after you put in your name, your email, your phone number, your address, that sort of thing, where you have to attach a few short essays onto your resume and submit that as a single document. And we can talk more about this in the Q&A section, but the short essays, we do mean short. I think you have 3 or 4 questions depending on the apprenticeship that you're applying to, and you have 500 words in total. So that's not 500 words per essay, that's in total. So we're talking like 50 to 100 words per answer. So short and sweet is the name of the game. And this is where you'd want to maybe run this past someone else who is going to be brutally honest with you. That's my biggest weaknesses, and I always write way too much. Why write 1 word when 3 can do fine? It's my axe to bear, my cross to bear. I've tried for years to improve in it. I always love having assistance from someone else to take a look at my resume and look at anytime I have to submit anything formally to make sure I'm not being too wordy. And then once it's in, we'll click submit. The recruiters are sort of functioning on a rolling admissions basis. So you're encouraged to apply sooner rather than later. And the other thing is that just in the name of fairness, we're not actually going to start reaching out to candidates until after the application closes. So for the data analytics and digital marketing apprenticeship, that application will close on Monday, the 21st. Project management data analytics and digital marketing close on Monday, the 21st. Project management will close on July 7th. So you have a little bit more time for the project management apprenticeship. But if you are in a position to apply, let's say in the next day or so, I would definitely recommend that, just because it's a rolling admission. So they're already identifying folks that they want to interview. And again, when the application's closed, then they will reach out to candidates to start interviewing. Okay, so this is what the interview process is going to look like. Fairly standard in terms of what the tech industry applies. You'll submit your online application, and then if the recruiters want to move forward, you'll have a phone interview, which is where the recruiter calls you and just sort of maybe asks questions about your resume or your experience. And then after that, once they make sure that you are, in fact, not only qualified, but like really excited about this opportunity, then they'll move on to the interview phase. And you'll do probably 2 or 3 interviews with folks that ideally you'll be working with. But if it's not with your soon-to-be peers or colleagues, then it's with folks kind of like Sarah, my colleague here, who's involved in the creation of these apprenticeships. And then it goes to sort of an independent review of all of the feedback that you get from the interviews. And that's just how Google does hiring in general, is that the people who do the interviewing are never responsible for making decisions about hiring. So sort of a way that they unbias, if someone's friend is applying for a job on someone's friend's team, that friend can't make sure that person gets hired, right? It gets passed to a third party group of reviewers at the company who have no history. You basically don't even see someone's name until the offer gets put out. And then if it all looks good, then we'll extend an offer. We are offering relocation relocation stipends for anyone who might need to move. So if, let's say, you apply for the data analytics role and it ends up that you have a position in Atlanta, Georgia, if you want to accept that role, that means you have to be in Atlanta. But if you do have to move, we can provide a relocation stipend to make sure that it's not too burdensome for you to move locations, because this is going to be an in-office, on-the-job job. This is not a virtual job. Google's offices right now are mostly closed across the US, but in short order, they will begin reopening in a very noticeable way, including, knock on wood, in New York City very soon. So I'm excited to have coworkers back in the office doing the job that we all signed up to do. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna just let everyone take a breath, and then we'll talk about resumes. I saw Sarah has been very graciously answering questions in the chat window, which seems to make sure that we're not losing anyone's momentum in terms of whether or not they would forget their question and want to ask it at the end. So huge thanks to Sarah for fielding those. And if she's okay, then if people still have questions, they can send it to the chat window and my colleague Sarah.
The one thing, Brendan, before we move on, that I would love to call out,
sure.
I've seen a couple of different iterations of this question come up is like, I'm doing this, which apprenticeship makes sense for me. I think that that's a pretty, on my understanding of the apprenticeship program, that's a pretty personal question. I would say there's a lot of folks who might have years of experience in a particular job pathway, and you're looking to make a transition into something that is slightly different. Like, for example, I forgot, and apologies for not digging through to find your name, but I saw somebody was a tech support engineer who's doing more of like an IT and support role who wants to transition into software engineering. Those are incredibly personal decisions. And so what I would say is that there's no perfect formula for somebody who wants to be in a IT apprenticeship or in a project management apprenticeship. The minimum requirement is that you have high school equivalency or GED, and that you have within a year of experience within the relevant job pathway to which you're applying to. And the essays, like Brendan mentioned, are essentially looking to suss out what is your interest in this apprenticeship area, and what is the sort of reason why you have been drawn towards this particular line of work, type of work, what sparked your interest, passion in it. So it's hard for us to say to you, like, if you've done X, Y, Z, this is where you apply, just because so much of this is meant for folks who are in the early career exploration phase of the given job pathway to which you are applying. So it's it's not a linear answer to your question, and I'm sorry about that, but I think that a lot of this is really based on where you see yourself, like what sparks joy from like a career, from a career exploration standpoint, not to overuse Marie Kondo's term there, but.
And you can also, you don't have to pick sides. You can apply to up to 3 roles at once on Google's job site. So if you think you can't decide between digital marketing or data analytics or project management too, as long as you haven't applied to another job at Google in the past 30 days, you can apply to all 3. And what's also nice is that the recruiters for each apprenticeship are separate. So they don't see who is applying to the other jobs necessarily. And if it comes to like the wonderful point where the recruiters have to almost fight over you, they will loop you into that conversation to say, okay, let's say, Kevin, you have to pick. Do you want to go into IT or software engineering, right? Just as a hypothetical. And then you can decide which one might be better suited for you. And that's also an opportunity. If a recruiter does reach out to you about this, you can ask them as many questions as you want, and they will tell you everything that they know. There's never any advantage to Google as a recruiter to sort of play the cards close to our chest and withhold any information that can help you, the candidate, decide if this is a right job for you, right? So the recruiters the team is built on transparency. It's in the DNA, and they will always be able to tell you every single thing that they know and that they can legally share about the job with you. So thanks for that, Sarah. I appreciate
there was another great question from Joe in the Q&A about, are there newsletters that Google distributes about apprenticeships or programs and job opportunities generally?
We do have a newsletter that's mostly aimed at college age and sort of post-college students. And Joe, actually, if you want to email, I'm going to put my team's email in this window. And anyone here who has questions about being sort of a college age student who is interested in working at Google, you can email that address. And that goes to my inbox, but it's shared among me and my colleagues. But Joe, I'll see if we can get you and anyone else signed up for that newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter. Again, it's mostly aimed at folks who are potentially gunning towards like an apprenticeship, or I want to join this sort of, coding bootcamp startup thing that Google has for current students. But, we'll see what we can do for sure. There's no problem with that. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving along. And now we're going to talk about resumes. This is good and annoying, but I assure you that there are specific tips and tricks here that you can use to kind of game the system to your advantage. So I'm not going to read all of these bullets because you can read faster than I can speak. But in general, the kind of advice that you hear from any resume workshop or career counselor you've ever talked to, they say those things for a reason. They want you to keep it short. They want you to keep it readable, concise, use bullet points, get many people to review the document. That's because they understand exactly what a resume is for. A resume is, and this is, I mentioned at the very beginning that I'm going to give company agnostic advice. I'll add a small caveat here. Anytime you apply to a major or large company, the resume is never going to get you the job. It's just going to get you the interview. And when you think of it that way, almost like it's a boarding pass and the recruiters are the TSA agents, making sure that your name matches your ID, right? Your flight is that day, you're at the right gate, right? Like all the logistical things that they need to move you on to the next step are there. And when you think of a resume as that kind of transactional document, it hopefully becomes a lot less intimidating as a document that you have to prepare that sums up your whole existence in life. It doesn't have to be that grand. It's not that huge. It's not that scary. It's a resume is a document that's having recruiters ask for very specific qualifications for you. And if you can give them exactly what they're looking for, then you can move on to the next step, which is the interview phase. So never forget content. I'll just call out a couple of these specifically. Try for a single page, but 2 is okay. My general rule of thumb, and I work mostly with students, but my rule of thumb for resume length is that it should, if your resume is more than 1 page, whatever is on that second page had better be really, really interesting. Because you think of who is reading the 2-page document. It's someone who reads a lot of resumes a day, someone who kind of knows exactly what they're looking for. And if your resume is cluttered or it kind of hides things places or some of the deal-breaking information that we are looking for, like if you're an apprentice, if you're applying for an apprenticeship and your education section, which will tell me if you have a bachelor's degree or not, if I have to hunt for that information and find it, you're giving me a chore, right? So you want to do my job. Assume every recruiter is incredibly lazy. Some of us are, I am. But in general, you want to do my job for me. And those are what the best resumes do. They do the recruiter's job for them. If you are still a student, and I know this invitation went out to like Queensborough and LaGuardia and a few other schools. So if you are still a student, and we'll talk about this in the next slide too, your education section in your resume, regardless of where it is in the document, should have all of your educational background. And if you have high school diploma or GED, that's an absolute must. A resume that has no education section is always going to have a lot of hard time moving to the next phase of the process because it is one of the minimum qualifications that we have, right? And so think of recruiter. I'm a recruiter for an apprenticeship. My minimum qualifications are 3 bullet points long, right? You have to be like at least 18, right? There also, I think I saw a question in the chat about age ceiling. Like, is 29 too old? No, there is no age cap here. In order to get a paycheck from Google in the United States, you do need to be 18 years old though. So that is the floor that we have. So I make sure that you're at least 18, that you have a high school equivalency or GED or professional work experience, and that you are not currently enrolled in a bachelor's or master's or PhD program. That's it. That's the only 3 things I'm looking for. So think of the resume as a boarding pass, right? And then I think that's it. Oh yeah, never forget contact info. You'd be shocked how many like PhD students from very, very well regarded academic institutions forget to put like their email address or their name on a resume. And that's not because these people are not intelligent. It's because when you focus on the small, tiny details of a resume, you can forget the really important things, right? So education section. Again, as I mentioned, if you are a student, this should be the first section until you get industry experience. This is any education. It doesn't have to be a formal degree program. This is where you can put boot camps. This is where you can put online certifications. Anything that gives a recruiter a clear understanding of your formal training and formal background is what we're looking for, right? I saw Constance from, oh, hey, Connie. Yes, it's totally fine to be enrolled in an associate's degree program. The only point at which a candidate would probably be more suited for our internships and full-time jobs is if they're currently enrolled in a bachelor's program. If they have graduated, if you have graduated from a bachelor's program and you have a bachelor's degree, but it's in a different field than the apprenticeship, that's also totally fine. So having a bachelor's degree does not mean you're overqualified. But if you have a bachelor's degree in computer science and you're applying for a software engineering apprenticeship, you're probably better suited for our full-time jobs, right? The experience of what the apprentices will go through is designed to be sort of like a compressed version of a 4-year degree in the 20 months that you're on the job with us. Let's see, what else? Brief description of any important projects. Yeah, you can take notes here. Oh, also, I should have mentioned, forgive me, I can't share this exact document with all of you, but after this session, we can email out a link to a recording of this presentation that we have on a careers resource hub that we have. And then if you want to take screenshots or notes, then by all means, you can copy this information. Google does not have a patent on good resume advice. Oh, and then if you are applying for a technical role ever, your skills, your technical skills, your coding skills, that should go in your education section as well. Okay, experience section. This is often for a lot of people the hardest part of putting together a resume. And this is where you want to be clear and concise, but you also want to keep things relevant. You want to avoid long descriptions of things. You want to include, obviously the employer or the position, the dates employed. And one question I usually get with this section of the resume is, what about stuff that's, not really relevant to the job we're applying for? Let's say you work part-time or you have some other obligation outside of your current job that takes up a huge amount of your time. And you can ask someone who looks at resumes to probably take a look at this, or a friend or someone you trust. But in general, we should try to keep everything on the resume tailored towards the job you're applying to. And if it's truly not relevant, but it does explain a lot about the way your time is framed and your experience is presented, it makes a lot more sense if someone doesn't have a huge amount of formal training in a field. If they're also working, if you're a student at LaGuardia and I see that you're not in like the coding club, right? But then I also see, oh, this person is working 20, 25, 30 hours a week, right? That explains a lot about how you spend your time, and it explains to me as a recruiter about how I should assess your candidacy. If you tell a recruiter how they spend their time, right? So the experience section, if you are a student, the experience section and the class project section can kind of be the same thing. It really doesn't make that much difference. The only thing that I would say is that if you are going to talk about class projects as part of your experience, please be sure to label them as class projects. There's no stigma against labeling them as class projects, but you don't want to accidentally tell a recruiter that you made your own like Pac-Man game in JavaScript, when in fact all 700 people in your entry-level class had to do the exact same project, right? It's just a way for us as recruiters to understand sort of where you are coming from in terms of your relative experience. And then the projects and other section, and this is kind of where you can kind of blend the stuff that's relevant and where it's not. If you wanted to keep it in one section, and the reason why we don't have like a sample slide here about what a quote unquote good resume looks like is because we don't want to influence how you package yourself, right? But the projects and sort of other section where you would want to maybe list like some extracurriculars, and we can talk about extracurriculars on the next slide a little bit, but anything that is designed to showcase not just your interests, but your passions. And I think that there's a specific difference between interests and passions here, that a company like Google is very interested in hiring people who are passionate about stuff other than work. You know what I mean? And when we look at candidates, we hopefully have conveyed to anyone applying to Google that that's a part of you that we are interested in learning about on a resume. But here's another caveat for my like company agnostic advice spiel, is that you want to read the general tone of the company when you apply to any company, right? So if you're applying to like a finance company, they might not care what your hobbies are, right? You're in to do the job. It might be a great place to work, but it's probably not going to be as like loosey-goosey as Google is, right? Then you might want to not say how into, like a semi-professional Dungeons and Dragons league that you're in, right? But if you're applying to Google, you definitely want to talk about your membership in a semi-pro Dungeons and Dragons league, right? And then extracurriculars and interests and hobbies. This is also like towards the bottom of the section, the bottom of the resume. This is never going to be this is always icing on the cake, right? And so if you're coming to the end of one page and you don't have room for hobbies or interests, it's totally fine. It's never going to make or break your resume. If you do have room, and a lot of these are student focused, just because that's when most of us sort of win awards or participate in like clubs and things like that. This is the section of your resume where you'd want to list that stuff out. So any awards or scholarships, or achievements or activities in non-directly relevant opportunities. So like if you are a senior member in your religious organization or your church or anything else like that, again, that shows a combination of sort of leadership and how you spend your time. That's something that you definitely want to show off to a recruiter. So just really quick, we'll talk a little bit about interview tips, because this is the second part after you submit a resume and you hear from a recruiter. What happens next is you interview. So you will not hear, and this is true for not just the apprenticeships, but for any job at Google, you're never going to get these like gotcha brain teaser zany questions that you probably have seen like a BuzzFeed article about like the 15 craziest Google interview questions. Like we don't do that anymore. The questions you're going to get are related to the job. They're related about your experience. And every single person that interviews for this job will get the same kinds of questions, so that we can calibrate fairly and assess people on a level playing field, so that no one feels like they were unfairly kind of punished for not knowing, how many manhole covers it takes to cover Manhattan Island, which is actually a question I got when I interviewed at Google like 11 years ago. So none of that. It's all role-related knowledge, no brain teasers. And then also, I think somebody asked if there's going to be a technical interview for some of the technical apprenticeships. There is not going to be a technical interview in the sense that one you would see applying for like a software job, right? For a full-time job or an internship. What we will ask, though, if you are applying for one of the technical tracks, is that you'll be encouraged to show off what you know. And you might be asked a hypothetical question where you have to put your skills to the test. That's where you would want to show off the full breadth of your knowledge. But you should also know you're applying for an apprenticeship. You're not applying for this is not a PhD dissertation defense, right? We know that you are an entry-level person. You are just starting this, and that's okay. What they're looking for more than, does this person know how to code Python really well, is would this person be willing to learn how to code a totally different language? Would this person be a good collaborator? Is this person good at thinking analytically to analyze problems? Is this person a good listener? Does this person communicate well? We want to see how resourceful you are, how you learn. And what are you curious about? What are you interested in? Because we're not just hiring apprentices, we're hiring coworkers and peers, right? This is not just a group of people in a basement doing this work. You'll sit in the same teams as all the other coworkers. So there's 4 key things. And again, I'm not going to read all these things down the list, but in general, we look at 4 key traits. We look at how you think, we look at role-related knowledge, leadership, and this is the one that trips some people up, but we're not looking for leadership experience in the technical sense. Although if you are currently in a leadership position in any organization, or if you're like a supervisor at a current role, that's music to our ears. But what we're really looking for with leadership is more like, have you had experience convincing a group of people that your idea was the right one, right? And that's for a lot of us, like I don't have a leadership title in my team, but I can point to times where I have been able to build a consensus around an idea I had and then put it into action. It doesn't have to come to the form of the title. And then the last one is googliness. This is like if you're rolling your eyes, that's okay. I roll my eyes sometimes and I see this too. But in general, Google is a fun place to work. And we like people who are curious, who are creative, who are fun, who don't take themselves too seriously, and are willing to try new things, right? My favorite, it's like I used to do new employee orientation trainings about this topic and this quality of Google employees. And everyone that gives this has sort of a different definition of what it means. But my favorite definition of Googliness is someone who never assumes it's somebody else's job to fix something, right? Google really empowers its employees to do new things and to take initiatives and to speak up if they think something should be fixed. So just really quickly, I'm going to talk about some other things, and then we'll go to the Q&A because I want to save as much time. I mentioned these as part of all of our apprenticeships. You will get an opportunity to have a Department of Labor certified credential to your name at the conclusion of the apprenticeship. Google has our own career certificates, and they are designed for people who want to get into high-paying, high-growth careers without having to go to get a 4-year degree in the formal fields, right? So our currently career certificates are in IT support, data analytics, product management, and user experience design. We also have one coming maybe a little bit later this year or soon, an Android development. So in sort of the software development and software engineering fields. And it's just a great way to bolster your profile if you don't decide to apply for the apprenticeship itself. And they're sort of, they're available on, and we can send out information about all this so that you don't have to furiously look up links and URLs and things like that. And then if you are in a position where you have a full, a bachelor's degree in the field and you want to stay in that field, then I recommend checking out google.com/careers, where you can learn about internships and full-time jobs, which we have numbers and numbers of across the US. Our main internship hiring season is the summer. And so we have finished that for summer 2021. But if you are currently enrolled in a bachelor's or master's program, or even PhD, then you can look out this fall for summer 2022 internship applications, which is crazy that we're already talking about next summer. Here we are, start of this one. Okay, so with that, if you want to email us, you can email us at us-apprenticeships at google.com, and I'll paste this in the chat window right here. But with that, I'm going to stop presenting, and I will take questions now. Also, thank you all for listening to me talk nonstop for 42 minutes.
So I actually just received a question from Sandra in the chat that I think would actually be a good one to address with the group, just around one, Google offering feedback after interviews, but then 2, what's the expectation around how, when, and if an apprentice or just like candidate applying to Google can submit their applications again?
Yeah. So I see, Sandra, I'm just reading Sarah's answer to you right now. As far as eligibility goes, apprenticeships are similar to internships where there is there's a window, right? And once you pass that window, you're no longer eligible for the apprenticeships because you sort of aged out of it. Not because you've acquired a degree. If you have, that's great. But mostly you just have spent too much time in that field to explore that, in a sense that you have more than 12 months experience in the job. And that's always going to be a case-by-case basis, right? And so that's why we're so hesitant to give a blanket statement about eligibility for a lot of these things, especially for apprenticeships, is because it's so new for us and it's such uncharted territory that we really want to be fair to anyone who applies to one of these jobs, so that you are never just hearing a machine or an automated response at the other end of an email, right? Every single application that comes into Google gets reviewed by a human being with eyes and a heart and 24 hours in a day, and the exact same hopes and dreams that we all have, right? So we just want to be as clear as possible that anytime anybody applies to Google, you will absolutely get a fair shake at whatever job you're applying to. And whether or not someone is eligible for a job, it's pretty clear that for internships especially, it's the clearest window that we can identify is if you are currently enrolled in a degree program with at least 1 semester left to go, then you are eligible to apply for an internship. If you're applying for an apprenticeship, you can go, in theory, years can go by and you can apply again and again and again, as long as you haven't in that time gotten to 12 months of experience, if that makes sense. And that's a case where it's always going to be a person by person, a candidate by candidate assessment from the recruiting team. I hope that answered. Okay, Sandra, thank you. You're welcome. Cool. So I think we have, actually, we're a little over the threshold of, if we ask people to unmute, it might get a little nuts. So I think we can just go through the questions as they come in. It's from Hamadou Balo, thank you. I currently have an associate degree. I'll be starting my bachelor's fall 2021. Would I be eligible for the upcoming software engineering apprenticeship? My guess is probably not, Hamadou. So what'll happen then is the software engineering apprenticeship for the US will, knock on wood, go live in the spring of 2022, at which point you will be finishing the first year of a bachelor's program. And because you're finishing the first year of a bachelor's program, that means you're eligible for all of our internships. That means you're eligible for the sort of historical tracks that we've set up to get people into the company through our college recruiting ecosystem. So my guess, Hamadou, is that if you wanted to stick with the degree program, and if you've already made this decision, so I'm not going to talk you out of it. but I think you'd probably be better suited for our internships as opposed to our apprenticeships after you start the bachelor's program.
I think that one thing we've also seen in the Q&A a little bit is just around how the Google apprenticeship programs like are sequenced if you're thinking through pursuing an associate's degree. And so the one thing that I will name, and whether it's an internship, apprenticeship at Google, all on-site experiences at Google need to kind of be full-time for a discrete period of time. So internships, for example, during the summer are 3.5 months, and you're full-time on site. Apprenticeships, again, they're 12 to 20 months. You're working, I believe, close to 100% time, but you have a pre-arrival learning experience with the third-party provider. You have additional learning experiences throughout the duration of your program as well. But we anticipate that when you are on site at Google, you are essentially working and you're being compensated full time. So we do recognize the challenge, particularly if you're pursuing an associate's degree or thinking about transferring, with the fact that this is a full-time program and reconciling that with attending courses and making sure that you're getting credits towards your degree. Again, we don't want to tell you what is best for you. This is a pay-as-you-go learning opportunity for folks who want to get experience within a given job pathway. And it's not like I, as both Google and also as Sarah as a person, don't want to be recommending to anybody what is going to be the best path for you. But I will say that I do not think that we have flexibility within the apprenticeship system right now to necessarily say that you can work half-time while continuing with your associates or your coursework, just given the fact that the expectation with the managers and the teams that you're sitting on is that you're going to be on site for at least 4 days out of the week doing work that is scoped for that team. So just putting that out there.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why Google basically doesn't have any part-time jobs, is because we're paying you full time. Like we're writing you a check so you don't have to do any other jobs, right? And to answer the question of, do I go to a degree program? Do I go back to my degree program after I finish an apprenticeship? And this is true not just for Google's apprenticeships, for any major New York company that has an apprenticeship program. The goal, in theory, is to make sure that when you finish an apprenticeship, even if you don't end up with a full-time job at that same company, that you are hot, fresh out the oven, ready to go, entry-level candidate for any company without having to have a bachelor's degree, right? And the one distinction I will make before going to Luis's question in the chat window here is that most major tech companies do require a bachelor's degree for some of the more technical jobs that we offer. So for software engineering, for UX, we do require a bachelor's degree or equivalent work experience there. But an apprenticeship is not enough to get you to a point where you can get hired as like a senior manager as a software engineer, right? The apprenticeships are designed to take you from very little experience to enough experience where you are a viable candidate at any major tech company for that job. And again, we can talk about this for ad nauseum, but if you have questions and you feel like there's some loose threads here, I'm going to just paste this email address one more time in the chat window for everyone to see. You can email us at us-apprenticeships@google.com. Luis has a question. Bachelor's degree in CS disqualify somebody from the apprenticeship program if you're interested in data analytics, but you have a formal background in computer science? It's a great question. I think it would kind of depend on the specific courses you have taken, Luis. So if you have taken, or even in your personal life or elsewhere on your resume, you can showcase how you have some, but not a lot, right? Like less than 12 months experience doing the kinds of work that a data analyst would do, or any kind of like big data analysis, or you sort of started to teach yourself SQL or R, the coding language, those sorts of things. As long as you can prove that it's less than a year, then I think the sky's the limit. Like from what you've just told me in this question, I don't see any reason why you couldn't apply to the apprenticeship. But that's the other thing, is you have a bachelor's degree in CS, like you can also apply for a full-time job as a software engineer at Google. You don't necessarily have to go to the apprenticeship programs. Cool. Anything else, Sarah? I think we've covered most of the general question
topics. There's a question from Joe in the Q&A about, do you know what types of projects some of these apprenticeship tracks will work on? And Joe, so I can speak to that primarily from the project management apprenticeship perspective, but I mean, I think that it really varies on the team that you'll get matched on. But in project management, for example, you could work on our like data center and operations team, making sure that like both building ops and like like you could be like implementing something to introduce efficiency into the like Google's data centers. You could, I mean, there's actually going to be apprenticeship roles on our education team to be working with external partners as well as working on some of Google's in-house run curriculum and education programs. On the engineering side of the house, I also know that there are folks who are kind of who sit across geo infrastructure, internal and external products who have scoped out, I believe, project work that is between 6 to 8 months in duration, so that when you're on site at Google, you not only have a project that, as managers are designating it, that feel like short term and achievable, right? That feel like there's a couple of different dependencies, but is a good like first project that you can work on while exploring the internal systems, partners, and ecosystem, both internally and externally at Google, that you'll need to work in within the given job pathway. And then usually there's a project that's a little bit larger that will take up the latter half of the apprenticeship experience. Again, it differs a little bit depending on the track. I know that project management is looking to give at least 2 projects within that 20-month duration. So again, I can't speak to every single pathway, but I will say that all of these projects that are being scoped for apprentices are going to be like fully nested within the systems, teams, infrastructure, and work that those teams are doing day in and day out. I mean, I'll be candid, there's going to be a lot of tool troubleshooting, figuring out how to use this like weird Google infrastructure system that we use for testing, and like needing to read documentation about how it works and how to check things in before you potentially do something for the first time. But I mean, that's not just the nature of working at Google, but it's the nature of working at a lot of different companies that have these embedded processes, systems, tools that you use not just to code, but like to project manage and to check in work and to track your work. And so there's a lot of what I will say is that everything that you'll be doing, it has been a project designated and scoped by a manager and approved by that manager's director, and will be heavily embedded in a project-based and project-oriented experience that is going to be very closely parallel to what other professionals on that team are doing.
Cool. Thanks, Hendo. So I know we have just a couple minutes left. I see a question from Karen. Does the apprenticeship include benefits like health insurance, time off? The answer is yes. This is the only way that Google hires people, is to take care of them from start to finish. So if you are working at Google and you have a google.com email address, you are taken care of as one of our own. You're in the family. I don't know the specifics about sort of the different, the insurance provider and the specific vacation and time off policies, but if it's anything like most entry-level folks have, it's probably 2 weeks of vacation a year, time off for 6 days, time off for bereavement leave, things like that. Pretty standard stuff for us.
We had a question from William about which email is better for us to reach out to for further questions. Would it be tech students or US apprenticeships?
I think if you're currently enrolled as a college student, either associates or bachelor's, you can go to techstudents@google.com. But if you're just someone who's interested in the apprenticeships program in general, I think then that's good to go to us-apprenticeships@google.com. And I'll circle back with the QTC folks to make sure that we can send a follow-up note to everyone who RSVP'd for this. That includes some of those specific, breakdowns and things to click and email addresses to hit up if you have further questions. So I know we're almost at time, so I wanted to toss it back to the Queen's Tech Council folks for any final words or anything else we may have missed here.
Thank you, Brendan. And I just want to say thank you both to you, Brendan, and to Sarah for joining us today. You guys are absolute rock stars, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you sharing this information with the folks here in Queens, and for your partnership with the Queen's Chamber and the Queen's Tech Council. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. If there's anything else we can do for anyone else here, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Otherwise, have a lovely rest of the week. It's New York in the summer. Go have your kids jump in a fountain somewhere. That's what my kids are about to do in about 10 minutes. So Enjoy it. Stay safe, stay dry, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you so much for all of your engagement and all of your awesome questions. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and learn a lot more about you in the course of the chat. But we're, again, Neil, Queena, Bradford, I'm excited to keep connecting and supporting you all and your community of other folks that you might know in Queens who might want to apply to the Google apprenticeship programs. So thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone. See ya.